Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Let's see. Let's go ahead and we'll read welcome to the October 2025 Minnesota Learning Commons Professional Webinar Series. The mission of the Minnesota Learning Commons, a joint powers partnership between the Minnesota Department of Education, University of Minnesota, and Minnesota State, is to promote high quality online, blended, digital learning and support educators teaching in online, blended, and digital learning environments. My name is Senenge Anzenge, and on behalf of the Coordinating Committee of the Minnesota Learning Commons, it is my privilege to welcome you to this professional learning webinar series for the month of October. I'm especially happy to welcome today's featured speaker. Dr. Elizabeth Adams is the Chief Engagement Officer of the Minnesota Responsible AI Institute. She's been at the forefront of artificial intelligence and innovation since the early 2000s. Working in private industry and the public sector for large corporations, cities, and with higher education, Dr. Adams' work has put people and experiences at the center of understanding how we might all benefit from a little AI in our lives. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Elizabeth Adams.
Thank
Dr. Adams, the
you.
floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. I'm super excited to be here today to share a little bit about the Responsible AI Institute. So I am going to get my screen shared so that you all can see my presentation. And if you can see it, if you can just give me a thumbs up. Can someone, or maybe Sanenge, can you, oh, is that a thumbs up? Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So again, I'm super excited to be here. I'm going to just kind of cover briefly, I've got 7 slides to kind of introduce the work that we're doing at the Minnesota Responsible AI Institute. And then I'm going to jump over to our website and kind of go through that. And we're going to open it up for questions. It's going to be very interactive. So feel free to pop your questions in the chat or wait until we pause, but whatever you like. All right, so as Senenge said, I've been in the AI space for a while, not quite since the early 2000s, but I started around 2014, becoming very, very curious. And so my career has evolved in that time to now stewarding and leading the Responsible AI Institute. So this is a snapshot of our team. And of course, I'm the Chief Engagement Officer and the founder. Also have a person who's working with us from South Africa, and that is Marty. Marty acts as more of our COO, and she helps with a lot of the operations and organizing behind the scenes, some of our systems and getting things set up. And then also we have Eloise, who I've worked with for many years, and she has a great background in workforce development, in designing quality systems, and in education. And so super happy to have them on the team, kind of helping me build what I hope will be a great legacy institute for the state of Minnesota. So here's a little bit about what we do. We are really trying to reach over 3 million Minnesotans and help them implement or adopt responsible AI into their workforce, into their roles, into the education systems. And so we have a very, very big goal. But the way that we do that is we kind of educate and we advise through workshops, through tabletops. We bring leaders in, or we'll meet leaders to talk about how to adopt and operationalize responsible AI. We also conduct training sessions for employees or for organizations, for their leaders. So we're always out in the field tapping into the community for what they need. We also offer, as part of our services, and I'll explain this when I get to the website, workforce development or workforce modernization. So as more organizations are wrestling with this AI workforce, many of the employees don't necessarily know where they fit. They might not have a path to contribute to the success of their organization's AI future. And so helping organizations kind of modernize those job descriptions so that employees have a clear vision of what their role looks like is something that we're super excited about. And then we partner with a ton of organizations so far to really begin to think about introducing discovery and exploration and what that might look like for an organization. So we're not necessarily engaged in the technical ones and zeros of designing AI systems, although I have been a part of that. Now it's really taking this message more broadly and helping people through literacy and educating them so that they not necessarily become AI confident, but they can at least participate in some way. So they're not left behind. So one of the things that we're really proud about is aligning with 7 SDG goals. And the real story here is not just about how we align with the SDG goals, but that when we do that as a part of our work, then the organizations that we partner with, we also help them align. And so as I mentioned, we're mapping to 7 of the SDG goals, and they help affirm that our work contributes to the larger conversation and the larger momentum about ensuring that our work supports SDGs. So for instance, I'll just name a couple. With the number 4, quality education, that's about cultivating lifelong learning as a tool for dignity and agency. And that aligns with our workforce, our responsible AI strategy, and our workforce development strategies. And then number 8, and I won't go through all of them, decent work and economic growth. That's really about building pathways to meaningful livelihood, and that's rooted in equity and innovation. And so that ties to workforce development and also the way that we attempt to link responsible AI jobs to economic success. And so also reducing inequalities, number 10, we're hoping to rebalance power inequities through inclusive policies and practices. And we want to model that through the work that we do. And I'll share more about that in one of our slides. But we're super excited that we're linked to this global organization, have the opportunity to present our vision to the United Nations this June as part of Open Source Week, to build more partnerships and collaborations around the world so that people can begin to understand how we're thinking about responsible AI here. So another thing that we're super proud of, and this came out of my doctorate work, was this language philosophy. So when I started, there was a lot of conversation about my doctorate. People assumed that because I was African American, I was doing a diversity and inclusion doctorate around responsible AI, because the reason for responsible AI is because there were biases found in some of the outputs of AI systems that led to AI harm. But really what I was interested in was broader employee stakeholder engagement. How might someone's lived experience really improve an AI system if they had a path to contribute? How might they have read your technical document differently, or how might they have been contributing as a customer care person, understanding the customer's experience? And so we chose to use valuing language when we talk about the people that we're trying to improve their lives through responsible AI education. And that looks like, as you can see, instead of using terms such as marginalized or underrepresented or historically excluded, we know that there are lots of terms or reasons why people use those terms. We decided, in order to give people dignity, that when we talk about stakeholders or contributors, it doesn't matter what their zip code is, and it doesn't matter what their income level is. And so this is part of our language philosophy in the workshops that we do and in the advising that we do. So at the Institute, we know that responsible AI is not a solo pursuit. It's a shared journey. And so just this year, we've been building brick by brick, because the Institute was founded in February. And we have had a number of touch points just this year where we've either done keynotes, or we've done presentations, or we've helped an organization modernize their job descriptions, or we've introduced the concepts, or we've worked with organizations to design AI courses and content. We've done a number of different things, but as I mentioned, it's really about the long-term transformational impact, so that the Institute, we're trying to build something for a future that we may never get to see, but that can be sustained because of the resources that we're trying to protect here in Minnesota. Fishing, farming, agriculture, and one other one, I know, water, so that we're always connected to our North Star. And that is, again, bringing people along the responsible AI journey so that they can have great jobs and contribute to contribute to society through economic success. So we serve as a global hub for discovery and exploration, which is what I mentioned. And you'll see some global partners there. The AI Policy Lab is one of those partners. I had an opportunity to spend about 6 weeks in Sweden this year as a visiting scholar, really learning how they collaborate and connect and how they're thinking about AI. And so a lot of those insights are helping to shape what we do here. And then, of course, we have a broad spectrum of members in the community that we participate with through learning and reflection. I think that's it. So now I'm going to go over, and if there are questions, I can take them now while I'm setting up to go to my website. Are there any questions I want to talk about or address? Anything pop up?
The folks right now are really just, it's been really
A
positive.
lot?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
really grateful as you're talking about some of these different experiences. You talked a bit about going to Sweden. Can you talk about some of how, the experience there, how some of what you picked up there maybe translates to the local context here in Minnesota?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question as I'm trying to navigate my PowerPoint here. I apologize. Heading to Sweden was an invitation to collaborate and connect, and I did not know that's what the experience was going to be. So I went there as a postdoc program with Pepperdine, and I had a list. We were going to co-design a syllabus and do some other work. And one of the things they said to me, they were like, "You Americans always come here with your list. Why don't you just come here and relax and kind of participate in the way that we engage?" One of the things that I loved that they did was they had time to meet every day. So you didn't see colleagues who said, "Oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in forever," because there were always opportunities to meet, either over fika, coffee and a sweet, or some other way. Maybe they were reviewing an article, or maybe they were working on an exercise through like AI model cards. So I love that, but they also expected, and it was unspoken, that you would spend time in community. You would spend time in nature. You would go to museums because that's what they did. And so they weren't in the office all day. Maybe they were out for a bike ride. Maybe they were catching some rays, like sitting on a bench with the sun. And so it was really a beautiful experience for me because it gave me an opportunity to kind of pause and reset and really think about leading what's next, leading for the future, helping other leaders pause and not kind of lead from a sense of urgency and fear, if that makes sense. So that translates to the work that we do and how I really have set up the team. One of the things we talk about is that we're not going to rush our partnerships. We will introduce ourselves. If people want something more long term, that's great. We are happy to go, and we're very generous with our time and spend time with people, helping them understand what we're trying to do, so that if the need arises and they want us to come in for something a little longer, maybe a 3 month to 6 month conversation, we can do that. But again, a lot of that stems from this connecting and collaborating and meeting people where they are. So I hope that gave you, a good understanding of how that translates that work. They were very, very interested in um, the version of responsible AI that I developed as a part of my doctorate, with a doctorate in leadership of responsible AI. They were very focused on the technical pieces and the policy pieces. And so I was focused on employee engagement. So it was really nice to build synergies to help us all understand that there are various ways that we're leading in this space and that we all need each other, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yes. And I think you're about to go into some of the questions that we're seeing right now and around. When you talk about responsible AI, can you
Yeah.
give us some idea of how do you frame that? What does that look like?
Yeah, matter of fact, I will go to the website now so that we can talk about it. So here's just the website. Hope you guys can see it, right? Just want to make sure.
Yes, we can.
And maybe I don't know, should I put the link in the chat in case they want to it's mnrai.com in case people want to follow along on their own. But I'm going to skip down to what is responsible AI, and this is what we put here. It's about making sure that artificial intelligence is designed and developed in a way so that the outputs do not produce harm on humans or the environment, and that it also embraces a set of principles, responsible AI principles, such as fairness, trustworthiness, accountability, explainability, unbiased. There are a number of principles that organizations can decide to adopt based on where they are on their journey. And so that's really what it's about, but it's more than just the technical pieces, which is what I have here. It also is about the resources. It's about participation, stakeholder participation, broader stakeholder participation. And then it's about workflows across the organization. So, and it's about literacy and education. So it's a huge discipline that really started in the technical realm because we were seeing outputs of AI system, whether it's healthcare or education or facial recognition, where there was unintentional harm being caused on humans because the data that was being used to train the AI system was not diverse enough. And so those systems were creating predictions and so forth. And so this is how we kind of define it, but we're also bridging the gap, as you can see here, with a more of a modernized approach, because we are taking it out of the technical spaces and we are helping organizations see that even those in customer care or accounting or product management, wherever they are in the organization, many people have ideas about how to improve their organization's outputs of AI system. That's what my whole doctorate was about. I spent 3 years immersed in understanding how organizations advance responsible AI or how they stall or how it stalls. And so we're trying to help with this gap by equipping leaders and organizations with the tools that they need to, again, begin having those conversations. Maybe that looks like setting up an internal council that's centering employees, or maybe it's about creating your first AI policy or your first acceptable use policy of AI. So it's a number of things based on where an organization is in the spectrum. Does that answer the question?
That's yes, I think that gives some really good insight. I just wanted to make a note to the room. Folks are commenting. Yes, our chat is disabled to participants, but you can't put questions in the Q&A. So we'll
Okay.
field questions that way. Thank you very much for sharing that perspective, Elizabeth. Um, can you talk a little bit to when you talk about responsible AI and the use in different spaces,
Mhm.
how have people, or maybe from your own experience in engaging, you talk about inputs and outputs and how to maybe train the machines to produce productive outcomes. Can you say something about how if folks are not participating or engaging with the different tools, they can't get some of the outcomes they're looking for?
Okay. So I want to make sure I understand because there's many different ways to participate in the AI space. So if you work for an organization that is designing and developing it, part of the way that you can participate, I'm not saying that there are exact pathways at every organization, but is through the participating in how the AI tool is being shaped. So if it's a facial recognition tool, having certain questions about where did you get the data? Is the data representative of the population that it will be used on? Have we gone through various frameworks or governance structures like National Institute of Standards and Technology to really validate our process to make sure that we are reducing risk and harm to others? So for each industry and each tool, there should be guidance, whether you are in Europe or South America, it shouldn't matter. There are tons of frameworks out there. And again, organizations, depending on their particular application, get to decide which framework and which tests and which audits they want to use. But employees should have a pathway to participating. And if your organization is designing or developing that, one way to do that might be through lunch and learns. It might be through validating the testing of the tool. It could be maybe helping the technical team write up your product requirement documents. It could be a number of different ways. It could be that it's an employee-centered internal counsel. If your organization is procuring an AI tool, so they're buying a tool for something, maybe they bought Copilot or Gemini or some tool to help with operational efficiencies. You may not have a pathway to designing and developing it, but maybe you can contribute to the responsible and mindful use of the tool. And part of that is by using it and observing the results that you get. So let's just say Copilot. Copilot lets you individually give a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you're getting a result that does not work for you. That's something has gone wrong. Maybe it's a biased output. But there should be in your organization a place for you to maybe email them, email whoever it is that's responsible for deploying the AI tool and letting them know that you found something. And even volunteering and asking, can you host something or sit with someone to understand? And that's exactly what I did many years ago when I began to see that some AI tools were not working well for certain members in society. I started asking data scientists questions, and I wasn't really satisfied because we were not speaking the same language. They were speaking in ones and zeros, and I was speaking about societal impact. And so I just kept asking and asking and asking. And eventually I held a lunch and learn. I was working for Thomson Reuters at the time. And unbeknownst to me, the chief privacy officer was in the audience and asked me to help be a part of a working team to write their first AI ethics principles. So you don't have to be an AI expert to help start getting momentum in your organization around responsible and mindful and ethical use of AI. So I hope that helps. If I missed something, let me know.
No, I think you covered it really well. Now, some of them, so many of our audience, our participants work in education, in educational spaces. And in some of our school districts or in some of our institutions, some of the users, the end users, don't have as much say into what kind of tools implemented. Can you say something, though, about how they might still have a role in shaping or impacting how some of those tools get used, or if they are used at all within the teaching and learning context?
Yeah, so if I were in that seat, well, I kind of am in that seat, as you know, I'm designing 2 AI courses for CCAPs at the University of Minnesota, so super excited about that. And what I do love about that is that there is a policy. But if I were in that seat and I did not know that there were these tools, I would start reaching out. I would start using the tool. One of the things I say is that if we're not using AI, we're not just going to be left behind, we're going to be invisible. Because when students leave colleges and they leave their learning experience wherever you are, they still have to go into the workforce. And I don't know really any workforce that is not using AI. They may not be experts and they are still on their customer journey or on their AI journey, but students will be required to participate. And so anything that an educator can do to improve their knowledge and practice of it, I think will help them become a little bit more confident, or maybe a lot more confident in how to reach out and articulate their message. Gen AI can help you articulate the message. You can type in whatever questions you have or concerns you have. And then that can be a part of how you send off an email or maybe make a recommendation, or maybe you start a small group. I think that the opportunities are limitless because, again, I know this for myself because of when I started. I just started following my curiosity. And maybe it doesn't happen at the job. Maybe it happens in community where you start to crystallize your message and your experience in community first before you tap into the work experience. So hopefully that helps give people some idea of different paths or opportunities or alternatives to contributing.
Thank you very much for those examples, Elizabeth. I know that recently you've been doing speaking in a number of different education spaces, and some of our audience is interested if you could share maybe some specific examples of your work in either P12 or higher ed spaces, or even some of the questions as you've been out speaking? What are some of the
Yeah.
things that folks are either gravitating towards or latching onto as you share different
Yeah,
ideas?
this is really great. So I had an opportunity to speak to the Board of Governors for an engineering department at a university here, and they were advising the dean on programming. And what they were challenged with is how to modernize their curriculum so that when these engineering students graduate, they don't just have the technical skills, they also have skills around AI. And so part of the conversation was, how might we incorporate more AI leadership and ethical thinking around the tools, and ensuring that they at least had some sort of a course that talks about leading in technical spaces. And so I thought that that was a great win for them to begin thinking about how to shape the future for these students that will be leaving the college soon or the university soon, by focusing on leadership. So I've come from the corporate space, spent over 20 years there, and that is something, especially now, that we need. People are looking for people with technical skills, non-technical skills, to help them move forward in business. I was up at Moorhead at Concordia College just last month, and I was amazed, honestly, at how most of the students there were not interested in using AI. So that was new for me. So there was this discourse between faculty who understood that they need to help prepare students for, an AI-enabled future. But then there were students that had lots of questions. And part of that was because they saw experiences with their parents, or they lived through experiences with their parents where their parents were laid off because, big tech companies had come up, had gone to Moorhead, and then maybe their parents got laid off. And so they wanted to figure out solutions of how to live without all of these concerns with AI. That was shocking for me because I didn't understand that there would be, so much interest in not using AI. But when I also speak to students, let's say at Stanford, I've spoken to courses or lectured, or somewhere else like a Stanford, or someplace that's in more of a tech hub. Students are looking for ways to innovate with AI. They want to know how they can get startup money. And so they're looking for their educational experience to help them with that. So find partners in community that can help them take AI to the next level. So while they're learning either from a technical or non-technical perspective, they also are expecting their colleges or universities to partner them or bring in folks that can talk to them about investing and so forth. So those have been, just a few of the experiences, but I have been encouraged that all of the educational leaders have been thinking about how better ways to help students as they prepare for the workforce. And so I've been encouraged by that. Lots of discourse, right? Because we are just as diverse as all of the AI tools and models and the outputs. And so there's lots of questions around ethics, around use AI or don't use AI. But what I loved about the conversation in at Moorhead and those college students was that they wanted to at least be informed and then make their decision. So they were leaning on the side of, we don't really want to use it yet. We still need to understand a little bit more about it, but at least they were. In just community for other educators that I've spoken to, there are a lot of people in the education arts community that I have found have not so much good things to say, right? They're concerned about attribution. They're concerned about people plagiarizing, people taking their work, and now AI can create images. And so having those conversations is very interesting, because if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have absolutely said that AI is not ready. And I worked my very best to help organizations prepare for delivering tools out into the marketplace with as minimal risk as possible to human harm. But so many companies, clearly I'm one person in this big old world. And so my thinking around that has evolved from an education perspective, which is we really do have to prepare people to work and operate in an education, in an AI-enabled world. I do believe that AI belongs in business. I've seen a ton of use cases where it has helped people get out of poverty. It has democratized. People are using it to demystify AI. So whereas someone was struggling as a small business owner, now they have AI as a partner. And so now they're able to really flourish in the age of AI. And how can I be mad at that? And so there's just so much discussion around it. But then again, we still are finding cases of what we call AI harm, which is a negative human experience as a result of a biased output of an AI system. So someone doesn't get the loan that they wanted because the data shows that people in their zip code don't pay their mortgage, or someone doesn't get a credit card because of the same thing, or someone's insurance is higher because of their zip code, or AI being used to predict traffic patterns. And now traffic is going through an area that has seniors and kids without really thinking through the second and third order consequences. And so we still have those particular challenges. And of course, we have the educating policymakers around how do they make decisions and how do they vote on policy around AI when they're not technologists? Like, who helps inform them of these civic tech initiatives? And that was one particular uh, project I worked on as a Stanford Fellow, was with the city of Minneapolis and AI surveillance technologies. So AI education for everyone, whether they're taking a short AI course or whether they're contemplating ethics and AI, to use AI or not, it's all over the map. It's all over the place. And I'm finding that folks who are in areas where AI is more used, then they're likely to lean in, if that makes sense. And those that are not are still contemplating it, and they may have the luxury of figuring something else out.
Thank you very much for so many of those examples. Now, in so many spaces in education, we think about or talk about gaps. And you mentioned
Mm-hmm,
just a few moments ago how AI might help folks get out of poverty. So
mm-hmm,
we have some questions in here, like, can you help us create some balance in there? You know,
mm-hmm,
some concerns around, okay, if we see more AI use and more AI
mm-hmm,
use by certain people, that might, expand a gap.
mm-hmm,
But how might also an AI used by maybe other people help
mm-hmm.
them either close a gap or help them get out of poverty?
Poverty.
Excuse me.
Yeah, so you're asking all the great questions because I'm a qualitative researcher, so I observe and study everything. So, a year before I finished my doctorate, I was in two Facebook groups that were predominantly African American. Both of them started at about 30,000, and no, maybe 2 years prior. It was whenever OpenAI's first Gen AI version came out. And so one was called AI prompt sharing. And so you could not post in the group unless you shared your prompt. So in this group that rose to about 100,000 people, people were learning and upskilling right in Facebook. And they were taking those tools and they were going into their organizations, because if you read through the chats, you can find out how people were improving their skills and getting better jobs, because now through Facebook, they were able to demonstrate that they were becoming more of an expert at prompt engineering. Some people also took those skills to then go and use it to ask a chat GPT or something else about a particular document or an article that they were reading, or some sort of a project that they wanted. How might they improve it? How might they improve their presentation for a leadership conference that they were giving? And at the time, I don't know if ChatGPT was doing presentations, but people were really sharing these tips and tricks about AI. And my TEDx is actually based off of some of the things I learned, where I wanted to go create this comic strip and realized that I was getting some biased images. But it started by observing this group and participating and learning from them how to really think differently about the prompts that I was using. And then, of course, what that's led to is more opportunities to speak about that. But I also saw people starting other businesses. So another group was a Canva sharing group. It was started by the same people. And so people were creating businesses by learning how to really tap into Canva's AI sweet spots, all of the different applications that Canva offers. And so for their own particular businesses, they were able to create and learn through some of the AI tools how to create better logos. But I think the real thing is the skill sets that they were learning as they were participating in these sharing communities. And so for me, it was interesting to watch a group of people who might not have been engaged at their work because maybe they weren't invited, maybe the organization didn't know, maybe they weren't comfortable raising their hand, but through this Facebook social group where the organizers required you to place your prompt in there before you could share anything, people were modernizing it or modifying it and making the AI become their own. And then that led them to sharing with their families and helping their grandparents use AI to write recipes and stories that they wanted to pass down. So it extends beyond just the Facebook group when you think about some of these stories. And again, as a qualitative researcher, I'm just in there loving what I'm seeing, just as someone who's interested in how people interact with AI at work and in life. So I wanted to just kind of highlight like that, but there are tons of them. Those just happen to be the ones that I participated in early on just to kind of see its evolution. And people were having fun and they were reimagining themselves differently. And that was as a result of Gen AI.
I love how you describe the social connections that happened as people were discovering something that was kind of interesting and they shared it in the space, how that was building and building on just shared interest and making folks kind of look a little bit deeper to the things that they wanted to either explore or experience or learn about.
Yeah, and I
You,
will say real quickly, so those groups are not about responsible AI, right? And that wasn't the focus because and this is always the challenge with those of us that work in responsible AI. You first have to help people get comfortable with AI. So responsible AI does not mean don't use AI. It does not mean do not use AI. It just means think about it from a responsible and mindful way. You don't want to generate images that would create harm. You don't want to generate scripts where the language might create harm. So it's just thinking differently about how to use the tools. And so some of the stuff in there was not always positive, but the moderators handled that. But I just wanted to say that with the release of these tools, it was really more about watching and observing people get comfortable with something that they leaned in on, and it was incredible to observe.
so what you just described, I couldn't help but think about, the early days of Wikipedia and the
Mhm.
notion of, okay, if we're all in there, anyone could put anything in there. But then as more people started putting things in there, people started checking each other a little bit more and
Mhm.
verifying and making sure that what you were putting out there was credible. Can you say something to how we might see or how we are seeing some of that level of kind of responsibility towards each other or towards community in some of the AI tools as they exist right now?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And that is where we have to continue teaching that responsible AI is a shared responsibility. It's shared leadership, it's shared collaboration, because the tools themselves, many of them do not build in those kind of community safeguards. I know that there are some social media sites where there's community context, but many of them do not. So for instance, if I'm using Copilot by myself, and I don't know why I get flagged for certain images. I'm not doing anything crazy. There's no community for me to connect with when I'm using it. And so I don't necessarily know how to do the accountability other than to teach that it is our accountability or that it is our responsibility. Because again, an organization, not every organization is adopting a responsible AI path or process or design and development. But what I will say is I see that when there are hiccups, people are quick to flag it. Um, yeah, so I guess that's my experience with it, is that there are at least more AI ethics, responsible AI people out there who are flagging some of the harm, but we can all also flag it. If we see someone post something that we know is not correct, it's biased, maybe even, some of the language that goes with it, then I think it would be great for us to all kind of speak up.
Thank you. That's excellent. Lots of really great comments in here too. So I'm since I've got the mic, I'm going to ask a little bit of a question.
Uh-oh, we get stuck?
I noticed
Oh.
on you talk about under your. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I back?
Well, yeah, maybe it was me. Maybe I got
Oh, okay.
stuck.
So on your website, under your success stories, you talk about the drive framework.
Hmm.
And I like the example that you cite there in talking about drive in the context of working with an organization.
Hmm.
But as I look at that framework, define, reinforce, innovate, validate, encourage, and thinking about who our audience is, educators,
Hmm.
working as educators in education spaces with learners from, K through 20, through college and beyond. Can you talk a little bit, or maybe frame some of this framework in the context of teaching and learning spaces, and how we might see some of this, or maybe even implement it in some of those
Yeah.
spaces?
Well, let me just say this. You can create your own framework. I asked Copilot, I have a huge framework that came out of my doctorate, and it was a bridge too far. And so I needed to kind of chunk it down. And that was part of my back and forth with Copilot on how to do that. So anyone can do this. So that's a tip, just letting folks know. But from an education space, I think about that in the way that I am designing this applied AI course with CCAPS. So kind of stepping back and saying, what is the experience that you want to have? And for this particular organization, they wanted their employees to be front and center. They were a conversational AI company. They realized as the executive team, they did not have the right cultural competence to drive some of these AI stories. And so they engaged this larger group to begin to think about what does that look like? And so this concept of drive is really putting the energy of the success of a project in the stakeholders' hands. And in this particular case, it is it's the employees. And so what I'm thinking about as I design the course is, how can I put something in the students' hands that they can walk away with and understand that they can contribute. So part of this means designing for that experience. And so that's basically what this is. It's like thinking about it, creating processes internally. And what they did at this particular organization is we started on a weekly basis. They developed their internal council. They developed what it looked like. I was there to guide them as kind of like their coach and their mentor. And that was important to me. And even as I design these two AI courses, so that the work is sustainable when I'm not there. And so I didn't want to come in with a checklist to say, you will be responsible AI ready if you do these 9 or 10 things. This was a co-partnership with this organization. And I think about that as educators, thinking about how you might engage learning to get those questions or to get to prompt those questions and get the answers that you need so that you can design the experience maybe differently for the next course, maybe the discussion board, maybe using ChatGPT or whatever tool you have to come up with those questions that would incite it. And also, if I may, leveraging AI in the in the classroom, which I think is huge because again, if students are going to be going into the work environment, it doesn't matter where they are. Most organizations are using AI, equipping them by using AI through the classroom instruction. So that's how I think about it. I don't know if that answered the question. Happy to go deeper.
No, that
if
very
you
much
like.
gets at, I know many of the concerns that so much of our audience has. Another question that's come up as you've talked about responsible AI use in different spaces. Some of the examples that you've shared about creating harm are more apparent, like, and it gets people thinking about things that are more apparent, like creating a deep fake video of a classmate.
Hmm.
But some
Hmm.
questions that have come up, folks are wondering, what are some examples of some less apparent harm that can come from things like creating AI agents that automate processes? What are some of the best ways too that educators or other users might check for unintended consequences, such as bias and some of those
Hmm.
things?
Yeah, from an AI agent perspective, the only thing that I can think of is you have to, it depends on how your AI agent is set up. So how it goes out and gets information to do the various tasks. And if it's going out and if it's pulling in language from, I don't know, a PowerPoint or another document to help you synthesize something, there it might create language. Or depending on the setup, it might go in to tap into someone's personal information, a folder that has personal identifiable information that maybe you were not supposed to see. So the first place is to ask, what is your AI policy? And even again, Copilot can help with this. Questions you might want to ask whoever is in charge at your organization for establishing your policy around AI use. And if you see something, right, say something. And so if your agent is doing something that looks like it's causing harm, it's coming up with a meeting title that's the language is harmful, then say something. The thing about AI is your governance structure is not ever going to 100% catch anything that might be unintentional or intentional harm because you don't know all the scenarios. We don't know what it's out there collecting, how it's being trained. And that's where an AI auditor would be good for an organization that has designed or developed or procured. So, as people who are not designers and developers, the best we can do is stay aware, educate ourselves, continue to connect with other people so that we understand what their lived experience is like, so that if we see something, then we can absolutely say something. But taking an AI literacy course, taking a responsible AI course. I have one on LinkedIn called Leading Responsible AI in organizations where over 40,000 learners have already taken it across the world. It's in 6 different languages. So educating yourself on the various ways. We're not going to become AI agent experts, but we can at least continue to educate ourselves on the way that bias can creep up. But again, if you see something, I would say reach out to those who are the ones that are establishing your policies, those who are running governance. Or if you don't have any of those, maybe it's an opportunity to volunteer for it or get paid.
I love that idea of volunteering or getting paid, but either
Yeah.
way, the idea of engaging in the process. I
Hmm.
just dropped a question in the chat. I don't know if you can see it there, but I'll read it here. I wonder
Okay.
if you would be willing to talk about facilitating conversations across the adoption spectrum. Folks who are resistant or refuse to explore cutting edge in all techno optimism. Can you speak to, how folks in our institutions, in our organizations, how we might facilitate conversations across the spectrum of different AI adopters?
That's a great question, and I don't know if I'd be the best to answer because those are conversations that I won't have. If someone doesn't want to use it, I will not force them. If they don't want to engage, then we won't have a conversation. Does
Well,
that make sense?
yeah,
Be
can you say something about that? So, and I appreciate that, not wanting to force somebody. How do we
Mhm.
create space for that being okay, especially in an environment where there's so much energy around we all must use?
Yeah, so if and this has happened in one particular opportunity where I spoke to a group of employees. They asked me to come in because they had started their AI journey a year before, but the employees had were a little reluctant to engage. part of what happened in that situation, which I do think was beautiful, was I asked a question and I said, does anybody have any fears about AI? And most of the hands went up. And so I never really got to do the other part of the workshop because we created space for all of these people to talk about what their fears were. Some of them were fearful because they said that their child lost a job because of AI. Some of them were fearful because they weren't sure what was happening in their community with their policymakers. People thought that they were going to lose their jobs. People were unsure what the AI systems were approved to do with data. They were concerned that they were not getting quality interviews because people were using AI to interview, and they had AI platform going while they were being asked the question, and then the answers would pop up right then. So they had all of these fears around AI. And the beautiful thing about that was the leadership team for that organization was able to hear that. They had never done that before. They had said, we're going to use this tool, here's our policy, and we need to make sure that everyone is on board. And so I came in to help facilitate that adoption and organizational readiness. So from that perspective, maybe a lunch and learn, or maybe some other kind of engagement, just asking people what their fears are, because I don't think there's a short amount of ideas or feedback about that. And slowly but surely, maybe some of those fears can be squashed with insights and information about whatever it is. And so in this particular example where I talk about the drive policy, what happened in that particular case was they were an AI company, but the employees did not feel like internally, and these are two separate companies, but the employees did not feel like the values of the company were being modeled internally, like they were being stated on their website. And so our first 6 months of this year-long engagement was just rallying around the values, coming up with values that the employees felt aligned with the work that they were being asked to do. And so I'm not saying that it always takes 6 months to get there, because in this other organization that I worked with, it was an hour-long workshop that I was there to do. And once I asked a question, I didn't get to much of the other parts of the workshop, which was fine. It was actually really good insights for the leadership team.
I think that question of alignment is really important, right? And as we're cultivating in organizational cultures, whether we're talking about a corporation or a school or even a school district, making sure that we can create space for different types of alignment in there can really help conversations move forward and help everybody kind of
Absolutely.
be a part of the conversation.
I think that's the most important thing, is creating space for people to share their hopes, their fears, their optimism, their skepticism in a space where it's facilitated so that we're just here to learn. We're here to learn, and we're going to take this feedback and we're going to work together, because this is an opportunity for an organization to come together and to think about as I mentioned before, the second and third order consequences. Like, are you all marching together towards the same North Star, right? You just mentioned about alignment. So this and what happened in Moorhead was a great, I think, opportunity for the faculty and the dean to see, and the president to see where the students were and where they were. And so, and how do they bridge the gap? And so those are some interesting conversations that will be happening.
I love that you brought us to this point as I'm looking at 6 minutes left in our time together,
Yeah.
and we're looking kind of forward. So we've
Mhm.
talked a lot about kind of where we've been and where we are. And the economic output from this point going forward, whether we working in education spaces are working with students in college and universities or working with students in K-12, the economic output is AI. So what can you say, from as somebody who works in these spaces around responsible AI, working in spaces of education and corporate or in industry,
Mhm.
what does the outlook look like for people who are in college right now, people who are in K-12? Should we be afraid of AI taking over everything? Should we be afraid of, should we be looking forward to AI helping us do different things? What
Mhm.
about those students coming out of K-12 not going to college? Should we
Mhm.
be afraid of that? Should we be afraid for them in the environment of AI? I know I'm
Mhm.
asking a lot of big questions and giving you only 4 minutes, and there you go.
Um, I don't operate in fear. And so I can't say that. I want to make sure that whenever I'm talking with someone that we don't operate in out of fear and urgency, because then we don't get to the lasting responses that we need. One thing I will say, and I don't know if everyone is familiar with the Department of Education and Economic Development's career pathway tool. And I have part of the work that we have when we talk about responsible AI career paths. If you go on that tool, you can see that if someone in Angle, Inlet, or Albertly, wherever they are, if whatever type of role they want, maybe they want to be a tractor truck driver, or maybe they want to be an engineer, it actually links them through how to the credentials that they need to get there. They have a high school diploma or bachelor's degree, and then they have a list of the companies that are hiring. I believe in that pathway. I do. I think it needs to be modernized, and I think we all need to be thinking about how do we modernize? What is the best way we can position these students to have good paying jobs when they come out? So we know that some jobs will be eliminated, but just like the wellness revolution or the other waves of innovations, that we have come through, there's been six now. There's ways for us to evolve in this. We just have a shorter time frame between waves now. I hope that made sense. I did a whole presentation on that. And so I think for us, what we have to understand is that these waves are coming. So we know that they're coming, and we should start preparing for the next one. If we start preparing for the next one, then we're addressing the one that we are dealing with today. And so for me, I think a lot about all of these jobs that are listed on that career pathways tool. What if we modernize them to be AI jobs? What might that look like, and how might we train these folks so that they can upskill and reskill? I use the tractor trailer example. What if that person understood logistics and how farming is being modernized with AI? What if they understood the mechanics of the tractor, like the upkeep through AI, the predictions? Like all of these things can help so that those people that are doing those jobs can still be valuable. And maybe their skills can be transferred to someone somewhere else. And so part of what we do in our workshops is skill stacking, responsible AI skill stacking, where we're starting with aligning with the company's core values, and we're starting with literacy and governance, and to get people prepared for these jobs. So yes, some jobs will be eliminated. And I think a lot of that is because organizations are rushing to implement an AI solution without really thinking about the consequences. I think that as educational leaders, you can build that next wave of leaders to begin thinking about how to prepare our society for the next wave of innovation, and even for the one today. So not just how can they get a job today, but how can they get a job today and be a good steward and a leader to make sure that the generation behind them also has good jobs.
Thank you very much. I love that whole notion of preparing for innovation and just keeping an eye forward and being ready for that next wave, because they will keep coming.
They will.
Elizabeth, we are at our time. I want to thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us today with the Minnesota Learning Commons, and for sharing all of the work, the wonderful work you're doing with the Minnesota Responsible AI Institute. Any final words that you have for our participants today?
Keep learning, keep being curious, keep building, keep doing what you're doing. We've never been here before. Give yourself some grace. This is a practice.
Oh, thank you. And I love that. Practice, folks. Practice. Again, thank you again so much for
Yes.
joining us this month, joining us today, rather, for the Professional Learning webinar series. Um, Everybody who's tuned in today, thank you for joining us. And this will be posted on the Minnesota Learning Commons YouTube channel. And look forward for the next webinar. Until then, have a nice afternoon.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.